She did not cry. That was the thing about Noura Imani that the man who broke her never understood. He expected tears. He had built his entire performance around the expectation of tears, because tears would have meant she was still his, still affected, still small enough to be wounded publicly and stay wounded. She did not give him tears. What she gave him was stillness, back straight, chin level, dark eyes fixed on the middle distance like she was looking at something none of the watching strangers could see. Her natural hair rose around her face in deep black coils, and the indigo and gold Ankara fabric of her dress caught the afternoon light pouring through the glass ceiling above, and she stood there in the center of the Galleria atrium, like a woman who had decided, somewhere very deep inside herself, that she would not break today. Not here, not for him, not in front of all these people. Jamal laughed again, louder this time. He wanted to make sure the people nearest to them heard it properly. He turned slightly as he laughed, the way performers turn to make sure the back row is included. His hand moved toward her body with the casual cruelty of a man who has never once in his life been made to feel ashamed of himself and does not intend to start today. "I mean, look at you," he said. "What exactly were you thinking when you put that on?" The marble of the Galleria held the sound of it the way marble holds everything, perfectly, without mercy. The woman nearest to Noura, a Korean woman in her 40s with shopping bags on both wrists, looked away, not because she was uninterested, because she recognized something in Noura's face that made looking feel like trespass. Noura's hand moved to the bracelet on her left wrist. She turned it once. 4 years. 4 years she had loved this man. 4 years she had followed his ambitions from city to city, restructured her career around his schedule, swallowed her own needs with a smile because she told herself that was what love asked of you sometimes. 4 years of being the steady ground beneath his feet while he walked across her on his way to everything he wanted. And this was what it had come to. A Tuesday afternoon in a shopping mall in Seoul, and a man she once believed in performing her body like a punchline. She had made herself a promise that morning. No more adjusting, no more making herself smaller so he could feel larger. She had come to this mall today to return the bracelet, to hand it back, say what needed saying, and walk out of Jamal's life with what remained of her dignity assembled neatly around her. But Jamal had other plans. He always had other plans. The laughter was reaching its peak now. The performance was fully assembled. The crowd was watching. A few people had stopped walking entirely. One man had lowered his shopping bag. A young woman near the boutique entrance had her hand over her mouth. Nobody intervened. Nobody said a word. The retail music played on overhead, something light and European and completely indifferent to what was happening below it. And then, a voice from directly behind her. Not loud, not raised, not competing with anything in the room for volume or attention. It simply arrived the way a blade arrives, without warning and without the need to announce itself. "She's with me." The atrium did not go silent. It went still. There is a difference. Silence is the absence of sound. Stillness is the moment when every living thing in a space makes a collective and unconscious decision to stop. The retail music continued. The elevator somewhere above them pinged softly. But every person within 15 feet of Taro Min stopped moving and remained stopped, because something in the frequency of those 3 words had communicated, on a level below conscious thought, that the air in this particular corner of the Galleria had just become genuinely dangerous. Jamal turned. He looked at Taro Min for 2 seconds, just 2, and in those 2 seconds, every calculation Jamal had ever made about himself and about the kind of man he was and about the situations he could navigate and the ones he could not, every single one of those calculations revised itself completely and simultaneously. The smile left his face the way color leaves the skin of someone who has just received very bad news. Noura turned slowly. She had heard that voice for the first time 11 seconds ago, and she already understood, on a level she could not have explained to anyone, that whoever owned it was not the kind of man who said things he did not mean. She turned. and she looked at Taro Min for the first time. He was not looking at her, he was looking at Jamal, only at Jamal, with the specific quality of attention that a man gives to a problem he has already decided how to resolve. His hands were at his sides. His posture was relaxed in the deliberate way that only people who have nothing left to prove can manage. The jade ring on his right hand caught the light for just a moment. He did not move toward Jamal. He did not need to. Jamal opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. What came out was not words. It was the specific non-sound of a man whose sentence died before it reached his lips because some survival instinct, older and smarter than his ego, reached up from somewhere deep in his chest and quietly strangled it. He took one step back. The marble registered the sound of it. Then he turned, and he walked, quickly, without looking back, without a word. Without a single remnant of the performance that had filled this atrium 30 seconds ago. The crowd exhaled, not dramatically, not all at once, but the held breath of the atrium released in that particular way that tells you the dangerous moment has passed and ordinary life is permitted to resume. The retail music reasserted itself. Someone nearby resumed a phone conversation. A child somewhere on the second level laughed at something entirely unrelated to any of this. And Noura Imani stood in the center of the marble floor of the Galleria Mall in Gangnam, Seoul, still turning the bracelet on her wrist without realizing she was doing it, and slowly, carefully, she turned to look at the man behind her. The man she had never seen before in her life. The man who had just, for reasons she could not begin to understand, claimed her in front of everyone. She looked at him. He looked at her. The retail music played on. The crowd moved. The marble floor held the afternoon light the way it held everything else in this building, with absolute and beautiful indifference. Neither of them spoke for a full 4 seconds, and in those 4 seconds, something began. Neither of them had a word for it yet. Neither of them would have admitted it if they had, but it began right there, between the stillness of a man who never explained himself and the quiet of a woman who had just discovered, to her own considerable surprise, that she still had the capacity to feel something other than pain. Something had begun, and nothing that followed would ever be simple again. Where in the world are you watching from right now? Drop your city in the comments. This story has been finding people in places I never expected, and I want to know exactly where it found you today. The thing about 4 years is that they do not feel long when you are inside them. They feel like Tuesday. They feel like grocery runs and shared playlists and falling asleep on someone's shoulder and waking up believing this is simply how life works now. This particular warmth, this particular person, they do not feel long until they end, and then they feel like everything. Noura Imani had moved to Seoul 22 months ago for Jamal, because he had a career opportunity that he described as once in a lifetime, and she had believed him the way you believe someone when you are still early enough in a relationship to believe everything. She left a nursing position she had spent 3 years building. She packed the pieces of herself that would fit in luggage. She came. She told herself it was partnership. She told herself this was what love asked sometimes. She did not find out about the other woman through an argument. No raised voices, no dramatic confrontation, no lipstick on a collar or a parking receipt from the wrong part of the city. She found out through a message, not even sent to her. A notification already on the screen before she had a chance to look away. 14 words. She only needed 14. She set his phone down. She walked to the kitchen. She stood over the sink for a long time. She did not cry that night. She cried 3 weeks later, sitting on the kitchen floor with her back against the cabinet and her knees drawn up, still wearing the Ankara dress she had thrown on that morning, still wearing the bracelet he had given her because she had not yet figured out how to take it off. 3 days after that, she found the clinic appointment card in his jacket pocket, a private obstetrics clinic in Gangnam, a date, a time, a name beside his that was not hers. She left him that same afternoon, not loudly, not with thrown things or raised voices. She packed with quiet, methodical precision, the same care she had once used to pack for a relationship she believed in, and she walked out. She found a small apartment across the city, She called the medical courier agency she had worked with when she first arrived in Seoul. She accepted every delivery they offered. She worked. She moved through the days. She kept the bracelet on. She did not know why. Some part of her that she had not yet caught up with was not finished with what it meant. That was 6 weeks ago. And then came Tuesday, and the Galleria Mall, and a voice she had never heard in her life that stopped the world for 3 seconds and said 3 words and meant every single one of them. Taro Min did not make a habit of inserting himself into other people's situations. He had spent 20 years building an organization and a reputation entirely around the principle of deliberate, calculated distance. You did not arrive where he was by being impulsive. You did not keep what he had built by speaking before the calculation was complete. He had told himself all of this in the 4 seconds between watching Jamal gesture at Nora's body and opening his mouth. He had told himself all of it, and then he spoke anyway. He did not examine it immediately. He filed the anomaly away and he turned his attention to the woman in front of him. She was looking at him with an expression that contained too many things at once. Shock. The careful gratitude of someone who does not fully trust a gift they did not ask for. And underneath both, pressed down with considerable effort, the unmistakable residue of a grief she had been managing alone for some time. He recognized that last thing, the way you recognize a language you once spoke and have not heard in years. "I don't know you," she said finally, not an accusation, a fact offered with the precision of a woman who had recently learned what assumptions cost. "No," Taro said. "You don't." "Then why?" "Because it needed to stop." Simple. Without the soft language people use when they want to be perceived as generous. He said it the way he said most things, as if the words were already true before he spoke them. "I didn't need saving," she said. "I know." That answer surprised her. She had prepared for an argument. She had not prepared for a man who agreed immediately and then said nothing else. "Then what was that?" she asked. A pause, 3 seconds, then, witnessing. Sometimes that is all it is. She did not have a response to that. His phone rang. He glanced at it briefly, a reflex more than a decision. Something in the way his expression reassembled told her that whoever was on the other end existed in a world entirely different from this corridor. "Go home," he said quietly. Not a command. Something closer to concern, dressed in the only register he knew how to use. He turned to leave. "You didn't ask my name," she said to his back. He paused. The jade ring caught the light for a moment. "No," he said, without turning around. "I didn't." He walked away. She stood in the corridor after he was gone. Then she looked down at her left wrist. The bracelet was still there. She covered it with her right hand. Something had changed today in a way she was not ready to measure. All she knew was that for the first time in 6 weeks, the grief behind her sternum felt, if only fractionally, like something other than a permanent condition. The Min organization did not have an office, not officially. What it had was a private restaurant on the 42nd floor of a building in Uedo, not listed on any delivery application, where the tables were always set and the food always prepared, and only 4 people in Seoul held the number required to make a reservation. What it had was a room at the back of that restaurant where Taro Min conducted his meetings, where the chairs were arranged with the precise, deliberate hierarchy of the Korean underworld. The elder position at the head, the second in command to the right, the enforcer at the door, and the boss himself in the chair that faced the window and the city below, the city that he owned in every way that mattered. Sung Kim was waiting when Taro arrived that evening. Sung Kim was almost always waiting. It was one of his most reliable qualities and one of the reasons he had survived 12 years in the position he held. He stood as Taro entered. He poured tea, filling Taro's cup before his own, the way the hierarchy required. He waited until Taro had settled into his chair. Then he spoke. "The Yonseo clinic records moved again last night," Sung Kim said. "Third time in 10 days. Taro said nothing. He turned the jade ring once on his finger. The Yonseo clinic was private, expensive, and connected to the Min organization through a chain of holding companies that would take a determined person 2 years to trace. It handled the medical records of people whose names could not appear in public systems. It was also the clinic that had been holding for 7 years the file of a patient Taro had never met, a boy with a surname that was not Min but blood that was. "Who is moving them?" Taro asked. "That is the problem," Sung Kim said. "It is coming from inside." The jaw tightened, barely, the kind of movement only visible to someone who had spent 12 years learning to read it. How far inside? Far enough to matter. Taro stood. He moved to the window. Below him, Seoul at night was all light and motion, and the specific beauty of a city that keeps its secrets behind glass. Someone inside his most trusted circle had been handling files he considered untouchable, and those files were connected to the one thing Taro Min had never allowed himself to treat as organizational business. "Find where the records went," he said quietly. "All of them." "Before we continue, I have to ask." Taro Min has just discovered that someone inside his most trusted circle has been accessing records he would die to protect, and he does not yet know that the woman from the mall has been unknowingly carrying those same records through the city for 3 weeks. Do you think the betrayal is coming from someone he suspects, or from the person he has trusted most? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know what you think is coming. The next morning, Nora had 3 deliveries. The first 2 were routine. Documents between private law firms. Work that required no thought and left her mind free to move where it wanted, which lately was not a place she recommended visiting unannounced. The third delivery was different. A sealed package from a private clinic in Apgujeong, addressed to a medical records administrator at a building in Uido she had not been to before. The receptionist had been unusually specific about the handling. The seal was not to be broken. The package was to be delivered only to the named recipient personally. The fee was 3 times her standard rate. She rode the subway to Uido. She found the building. She took the elevator to the 14th floor and walked to the correct office and sat in a corridor that smelled of clean paper and expensive air conditioning and waited with the stillness she had been practicing since she learned that stillness was the one thing Jamal had never been able to take from her. A man came to collect the package. She noticed him the way she noticed things when she was paying attention without knowing why. Korean, mid-40s, dark suit, anonymous build, the specific unremarkableness of a man whose job required him to be forgotten. He signed for the package without eye contact. Before he turned, she saw his hand. A jade ring, square-cut green stone, black metal setting. She filed it away, or tried to. The thing about details that lodge themselves without permission is that they tend to wait. She found a small cafe around the corner from the building and ordered a coffee she did not particularly want, and sat by the window as rain began threatening the city from the direction of the Han River. She thought about his voice, the way he had looked at Jamal, not with anger but with something quieter and more absolute, and the way the sound of Jamal's laughter had simply stopped, the way a faulty bulb stops when you hit the switch. She thought about what he said, witnessing. Sometimes that is all it is. She turned the bracelet on her wrist. Outside, the rain that had been threatening Seoul all morning arrived without further announcement. She finished her coffee. She reached into her courier bag for her phone. Her fingers touched a sealed envelope she did not recognize. She stopped. She looked into the bag. The envelope was small, unmarked, tucked flat against the interior lining. She had not placed it there. She did not know when it had arrived or how. She closed the bag. She was not ready for that yet. She put her phone in her pocket and she walked back out into the rain. He found her that same evening. That was the specific talent Jamal had always possessed. He could locate her with precision when he needed something. It was only when she needed something that his ability to find her became mysteriously impaired. He knocked on her apartment door at 7:15. She knew it was him before she reached the door because she had spent 4 years unconsciously memorizing the rhythm of his knocking, the way you memorize everything about a person who moves through your daily life. She opened it anyway. Jamal looked different from them all. He was performing a different version of himself tonight, the careful one, the warm one, the one who arrived with contrition so precisely calibrated to her emotional frequency that she had believed it was real for the first 6 months of their relationship. She knew better now. "Nora, I know about Suki," she said. "I know about the clinic. I know how far back it goes. I know everything, Jamal. There is nothing left that you could say that I have not already accounted for." His jaw tightened. The warmth recalibrated. "There are documents," he said. "Things that passed through your hands, from a clinic. I need them back." She stared at him. "You came here for documents. It is important. You cheated on me for 18 months. You got another woman pregnant, and you're standing at my door asking me for documents. Nora, you need to leave." "Those documents," Jamal said, his voice stripped now of warmth entirely, "connect to people you do not want to know about, people who will not ask as politely as I am asking. You need to give them to me before what?" He stopped. She held his gaze. He was afraid. She could see it now, clearly, with the performance gone. Whatever those documents contained had run out of the time it was operating on. "Get out of my apartment," Nora said quietly. "And if you knock on this door again, I will handle it in a way that you will not enjoy." She closed the door. "Right now, if you feel what I feel, watching Nora stand there, I need you to say something in the comments." Because Jamal had 18 months. 18 months of waking up beside this woman every morning, of receiving her loyalty and her patience and every good thing she had to give, and choosing every single day to lie. And now that the cost of his choices is arriving, he has come to her door, not to apologize, not to explain, to ask for something. "Tell me what you would have done, because I need to know I am not alone in this." Nora went to her courier bag. She found the delivery log from the past 3 weeks. She sat down and began, methodically and with the focused attention of someone trained to read what was actually present rather than what she expected to find, to trace every package she had moved through the private clinic network in Gangnam. 3 minutes in, she found a name, a patient name, on a routing label for a package she had delivered 5 days ago, a name she would not have recognized 4 days ago. She sat with it for a long time, the name, the clinic, the jade ring, the 3 times rate, the specific instructions. And then she thought about the man in the charcoal suit in the Galleria Mall, the man with the jade ring on his right hand. She had noticed it when he stood behind her. Square-cut green stone, black metal setting. She noticed things. It was a habit from years of nursing. The body told you everything if you knew how to look. The packages she had been carrying for 3 weeks. The private clinic in Apgujeong connected to the name she had not recognized until tonight. Taro Min. She had been walking through his world for 3 weeks without knowing it. She had moved through buildings his organization controlled. She had handled files that contained information he apparently did not know was in motion. And then, by some convergence of terrible timing and an ordinary Tuesday errand, he had walked into the same mall at the same moment that her past decided to perform itself loudly in a public atrium. It was not arranged. It was simply coincidence, which was somehow worse. She reached for her phone. She did not have his number. She sat with that for a moment. Then she went to the courier agency booking system. She followed the chain of names. 20 minutes later, she had what she needed. She put the phone face down on the table. She thought about her mother, a proverb pressed into her like a thumbprint years ago, worn smooth from handling. The river that runs quietly still knows where it is going. She turned the bracelet once, then she picked up the phone and called. 3 rings. Who is this? Not a question, a request for information. "The woman from the mall," she said. "I need to speak to you, not about yesterday, something else." 3 seconds of silence. "Tell me where you are," Taro said. "If you are still here and this story has its hands around you, I need you to do one thing right now. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, because what is coming in the next few minutes is the part that changes everything, and you do not want to arrive late for it. He came alone. No Sung Kim, no one watching the entrance from a car below. He arrived at her apartment door in the same charcoal suit, the collar slightly loosened, and he stood in her doorway the way he had stood in the mall corridor, without visible agenda, without urgency, as if the evening had all the time it required. She let him in. She showed him the delivery log. She laid out everything she had found. She told him about Jamal's visit and what he had demanded. She watched Taro's face as she spoke, and she watched the controlled stillness of it deepen in a particular direction. Not toward anger, but toward the specific gravity of a man receiving confirmation of something he had feared and hoped simultaneously to be wrong about. When she finished, he was quiet. "How long have you been handling those deliveries?" 3 weeks. "You never opened the packages?" "No." He looked at her steadily. "I believe you." The simplicity of it reached her in a place she had not expected. After 4 years of having her word treated as the opening position in a negotiation, hearing "I believe you" with no attached condition felt like something she had not known she was hungry for until it arrived. They talked for an hour and 40 minutes, not only about the documents. Things arrived without being summoned, the way they do when two people are genuinely paying attention to each other for the first time. She told him about nursing. He asked specific questions, not performative ones. Questions that told her he was actually listening rather than waiting for his turn. He told her very little about himself, but what he chose to say was real. And she understood that for a man who operated inside the kind of life he had built, saying anything real at all was its own form of recklessness. At some point, she made tea. He accepted the cup with both hands, in the Korean way. The way you hold something offered by someone whose gesture you intend to respect. She noticed. She said nothing, but she noticed. "The person accessing those files," Taro said, setting the cup down, "is someone I trusted with my life." He said it without self-pity. "That is the worst kind," Nora said quietly. He looked at her. "Yes," he said, "it is. Right now I need you to tell me what you think is about to happen, because Taro is about to find out who has been betraying him, and Nora is standing very close to the center of something she walked into without knowing it was there. Is she safe? And is what is growing between these two people strong enough to survive what is coming? Comment right now. I want to know." 3 days passed. In those 3 days, Taro's people identified the leak. A name was confirmed. Evidence assembled. The situation within the Min organization was addressed with the specific, irreversible efficiency that Taro Min had spent 20 years making inevitable. Jamal, following a quiet visit from Jin Park that required no raised voices and took 12 minutes, left Seoul on an early morning flight. He did not contact Nora again. The immediate danger had passed. Taro came to her apartment again on the 4th evening. Not for business. There was no business left. He came because he had spent 3 days telling himself he would not come and arrived at her door anyway, which was becoming, he noted privately, a pattern. She opened the door before he knocked. "I heard you coming," she said. Something in him shifted. "Nobody hears me coming." "I did." He stood in the doorway. She held it open. He came in. They sat on her small balcony. The city burned below them, and the autumn air carried the particular scent of Seoul at night. Street food and cool pavement and something that was not quite rain. He told her about the Jisa rite, not entirely, the edges of it. How every year on the anniversary of his father's death, the Min family assembled in the old way, the food offerings arranged by height and category in the precise Confucian order, the incense lit, the ancestral tablets placed with ceremony, and how every year Taro stood in that room and felt the cold, specific weight of a lineage that had survived 3 generations of the underworld and would now stop with him because he had no children, or so the family believed. Nora listened the way she listened to everything, completely, without filling his silences with reassurance he had not asked for. he said. 7 years ago, there was a woman. He said nothing else for almost a full minute. She did not prompt him. She left because she understood what staying would cost her. She was right. I knew she was right. I let her go because I believed it was the correct thing to do. The night air moved between them. I found out 3 years ago that she was carrying my child when she left. Nora said nothing. She turned the bracelet once on her wrist, then her hand went still. And in that moment, she understood exactly why a man who built his entire life around deliberate distance had stepped into a public atrium and spoken 3 words for a stranger. He had not rescued her. He had recognized her. Does he know about you? No. Do you know where he is? Taro turned the jade ring on his finger. Once. No. Then Sung Kim appeared in the apartment doorway behind them. And from the expression on his face, both of them understood simultaneously that the 3 days of quiet had been exactly that. 3 days. The records had not simply been accessed. They had been copied and transmitted. To a man named Daro Kim, head of a rival organization, whose connection to everything was now clear. Suki Han was his daughter. The miscarriage had not ended her involvement. She had been working with her father long before Jamal arrived in Seoul. Jamal had been used as a carrier who moved through Nora's life and through the clinic network without triggering any of the organizational alerts that would have stopped anyone with a known identity. Nora had been the unknowing bridge between Taro's secret and the people who intended to use it against him. The crisis was not the threat to the organization. Taro had faced threats before. He knew exactly what tools to use, in what sequence, at what cost. That had never required him to hesitate. The crisis was Nora, because Sung Kim had laid it out methodically, to pursue this fully, to locate every copy of those records, to trace every person who had handled them. The investigation required Nora to be formally identified as part of the chain, her name documented, her deliveries logged, her apartment, her life, her presence in Seoul, all of it folded into a war she had never agreed to enter. He could protect her by keeping her outside the investigation. But then the truth about his son remained buried, and the people using that truth as a weapon remained in position. He could pursue it entirely, and he could not guarantee her safety. There was no option that did not cost him something he was not willing to lose. He looked at the lamp, the folded Ankara fabric on the chair, the delivery log on the table, the life she had been building, one careful day at a time, in a city that was not hers and that she had not yet decided whether to stay in. Then he looked at her. She was watching him the way she had watched him since the first evening, not waiting for him to perform, just watching what he actually was. I am going to give Sung Kim different instructions, Taro said. Sung Kim's expression shifted. We pursue this without her name in the chain. We take longer. We take more risk. Taro, different instructions, he said quietly. Final. Sung Kim left. The apartment was quiet. Taro turned to Nora. She was standing now. You didn't have to do that, she said. No, he agreed. Your people will say you let a woman compromise your judgment. My people, he said evenly, say many things. The quiet stretched between them. Not the uncomfortable kind, the other kind. The kind that has things living in it that have not been named yet. She reached up and unclasped the bracelet from her wrist. She held it for a moment, looked at it, then set it down on the table beside the delivery log. There's something in my bag, she said. She had not gone through it completely since the cafe in the rain. But now, reaching for her charger, her fingers found it again. The sealed envelope, no marking she had placed there, no return address, no name. She held it out to him. He opened it. Inside was a single photograph. A boy, perhaps 7 years old, dark-haired, with the precise set of a jaw that was immediately, irrefutably, unmistakably his. The boy was laughing at something outside the frame, his face entirely open, entirely unguarded in the way that only children who have been made to feel completely safe can manage. On the back, in handwriting neither of them recognized, 3 words and a clinic address. He is well. The room did not change. The lamp stayed warm. The city beyond the window stayed lit and indifferent and luminous. The bracelet remained on the table where she had placed it. But something in Taro Min broke. Not loudly, not dramatically. The way old things break when the weight carried for too long finally exceeds what they were built to hold. A quiet fracture, a loosening around the jaw, the specific brightness in the eyes of a man who has not done what he is very close to doing in front of another person in 7 years. He looked at the photograph for a long time. Nora did not move toward him. She did not speak. She did not offer the comfort the moment seemed to call for, because she understood, with the same instinct that had made her a good nurse for 3 years, that what this man needed right now was not comfort. It was witness. So she stood there, and she let him have the full weight of it. After a while, he looked up. "Someone wanted me to find him," he said, voice steady, "just barely. Someone has been trying to reach me, through you." "It looks that way," she said. "You were never just a courier." She held his gaze. "No, I suppose I wasn't. If this story has found something real in you today, share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. Because the best stories find us exactly when we need them most, and this one is not finished yet." He moved to leave, the way he always moved to leave, the controlled, decisive economy of a man who had learned that staying always cost more than departing. He reached the apartment door, his hand on the frame. Nora had not moved from where she stood. "Taro." He stopped. She looked at the bracelet on the table, at the thing she had just released, and the lightness underneath where it had been. "The river that runs quietly," she said slowly, almost to herself. The proverb her mother had pressed into her like a thumbprint years ago, worn smooth from handling, still knows where it is going. She felt him turn. "I think you know where you're going," she said. "I think you have known for a while." A long silence. Then, quietly, "And you?" She looked up at him. "I'm still figuring it out." He turned fully. He walked back across the apartment. He stood in front of her, close, not touching, the same charged, held-breath distance that had been the register of everything between them since the first second in the mall corridor. He looked at her, not the way he looked at problems, not the way he looked at the city from 42 floors above it, not even the way he looked at the photograph still held loosely at his side, the way a man looks at the one thing he did not calculate for. His right hand rose, his fingers closed around her left wrist, the place where the bracelet had been, not possessively, not desperately, simply, as if releasing the wrong things and holding the right one was the same motion, made at the same time, in the same small apartment, with the bracelet on the table between them and Seoul burning indifferent and beautiful outside the window. She looked at his hand on her wrist, at the jade ring, at the photograph held in his other hand, at the bracelet on the table. Then she looked up at him. Neither of them spoke. Because some things that begin in a mall atrium on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, in 3 words, in the specific silence after cruelty has been interrupted, are too large for the ordinary architecture of words. The screen goes dark. But the story does not end. It does not end because somewhere in Seoul there is a 7-year-old boy with his father's jaw who does not know his father's name, and somewhere in a small apartment with a warm lamp and a bracelet on a table and 2 people standing closer than either of them planned, something has begun that neither of them will be able to walk away from cleanly. It is only the start. Taro Min has a son he has never met. Someone in Seoul has been trying to reach him through Nora for weeks. And now that he knows, now that the photograph is in his hands and the address is on the back, there is only one question that remains. Is he willing to let the man he has become be seen by a child who deserves a father? And is Nora Imani going to be the reason he finds the answer? Part 2 is coming, and it will not be quiet. Subscribe right now, notifications on. I will see you in the next chapter. If this story pulled you in, you already know this is where you belong. More stories like this drop here every single day. Don't miss the next one.